Good morning, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, there we are. My name is Keet. I'm the Chair for Critical Studies in Higher Education Transformation here at Nelson Mandela University. And of course, with my collaborators, network partners, or co-travelers, the Nelson Mandela Foundation and the HSRC, we are grateful that you are honoring us with your presence, providing the kind of groundwork, spade work for a very interesting and productive discussion we're going to have today. A few housekeeping notes. The one is that we are streaming live, so if you have any objection, please indicate so, and we'll take that into consideration. Also, that because of the live streaming, that you are asked not to move around during the formalized presentations as well, okay? But after that, of course, it's a very flexible, informal space for you to engage and discuss with one another what we came here for. The one is that I have to acknowledge, and that yesterday it was also spoken about, the one is that we have a university shutdown on two of our campuses in Summerstrand. And as you know, part of our entire intellectual project is to respond to the challenges of our times, and one that rears its head in the context of student activism and mobilization is that of poverty and inequality, and also the dysfunctions of our system that is designed to respond to that. And in different kinds of ways, it's actually a very obvious thing that it gets expressed within the university space, because that is what a university is for. So bear that in mind, that as we discuss a variety of things, and especially the things close to the heart of those icons that we will be discussing over the next day and a half, has been exactly this particular challenge. Of course, you know that we are always in the throes of a zillion contradictions at one at the same time. And as they emerge, we will try and manage them around what is happening at this colloquium. Of course, with your advice and in collaboration with your thoughts as well. So if the chairperson or Laura or the VC who's here as well has to leave, they are preparing actually the kinds of discussions with the students. Please excuse them. It relates to those kinds of challenges as well. But I don't want you to be alarmed about anything. You know, these are our students. It's perfectly fine. We go on with the discussions as is and see how we engage with it when it comes. Of course, the student panel that will take place after Verne and Crain and I open this morning's session will inevitably address those matters as well. One is that I literally want to just, because this is not going to happen and forget and all those kinds of things, I want to acknowledge Marisa and her team for holding the entire program together. Marisa, Deroni, Jenny, Avi, Melatisi, Nobubele. So thanks so much, Zizipo, Nakolo. So this is absolutely fantastic, that one can go home. You don't even get a WhatsApp or a call, You just come back at 7 o'clock in the morning and they're already busy. Ryan, of course, you're standing in so many different kinds of ways as well, last night. So thanks for this. It really speaks to the kinds of relationality one wants to create in the working space as well, and mobilizing people around a particular set of ideas, which is also a thematic area of this colloquium. And then what we have forgotten last night was also just to frame the collaboration with the art gallery here and the one that we're going to have on 2nd Avenue campus later today. Mary and her team and her colleagues have been crucial in many planning discussions around pulling this together. And of course, as you can see, the exhibition last night as well was actually tying up with the exact same theme of the colloquium, you know, Dalibhunga, this time that Mandela. Apart from that, they have been, I must say, quite different from what I've experienced on the university spaces, you know, very open into supporting the growth of the chair on this campus and assisting us in different kinds of ways. And so we would not have been able to do this kind of work without these very, very tight, respectful, and dignified, also intellectually stimulating collaborations that we have with them and that will continue in future. So the entire SOMAT team has been very helpful in that regard. And as you would know, most of our key challenges that we're facing via these forms and mediums and mechanisms, they have different interpretive schemes when they are screened through those kinds of human activity as well, that provides us simply a different way of looking at the world and also of being as well. The other note is that you can see that this is an absolutely wonderful space, and so, but it's old, you know, and so there are certain limitations to it. We have tried to engage with the issue of access and disability, and we have checked that we are sorted out in that regard. So thanks for responding to that. We had a second venue booked as well, just in case we will be challenged with those kinds of things. And then we have ablution facilities, bathrooms on the right side, as you know, my right side, in that corner there. But we also have, same on this floor as well, you know, just walk straight down the corridor and you will find those as well. I'm just making sure that everything is covered as far as those kinds of things are concerned. It is not covered.
These two cars, they're outside on the street, the windows are open and the alarm's going off. We just want to see if we can find the owners.
Okay, there are two cars. Okay, this is part of any gathering, eh? There are two cars. A white Jetta, HMF 923. Is that Eastern Cape? Eastern Cape? Yeah, okay. And then a Kia, YNY 375 GB. GB? Gauteng? Okay, Gauteng. Okay, right, lovely. And thanks for that, Jenny, because it reminded me as my eye catches Joel sitting that corner. You have been acknowledged last night, sir, but it's an absolute great honor having you around in this space. I'm not so sure whether there are others who came in this morning that I'm not aware of. And we have a different set of discussions that we will have around the Nelson Mandela connection with Mistra as well, so that will be continuing. And I know that Advocate Tembeka has been delayed, so he will also join us, later today. So with that, two very interesting people to work with. They have a kind of intellectual humility that is very rare in the academy, because we do produce forms of narcissism and self-obsession that I sometimes don't understand. So like it troubles me and it surprises me, you know, because in the context of knowledge, its main function is to produce humility. And it seems like the university, its characters, are capable of doing that. But so we will chat around so many different kinds of things, Chair, as you would know, via emails. And I have a fantastic, probably email list of how this kind of thing came together. And because of that, we would like to share that story with you so that you can see that there's always like a backdrop of how things emerge when a colloquium like this comes together. Okay, so please welcome Verne and Crain to the stage, please. And apologies that we are all men. It just worked out like that, that we couldn't fix this thing up, you know. So sorry, no, no, it is the reproduction of the system. Let me start off first. The one is that when the VC put forward her key ideas in the inaugural last year, you know, all these kinds of things are daunting propositions, you know. And for that, you know, if you read it and you read it again, you know, it becomes both interesting and more challenging as we move ahead. And since that particular inaugural, the worry, no, let me put it, the intellectual proposition as to what one do with it, at least in a particular way in which we can do around the name change and, you know, attaching the values and the figure of Mandela to the university's persona, kind of like a key thinking, you know, you can say obsession, but occupation, you know. So, and it was actually very, we call it productive to think through this. So one time in one of our regular discussions that we have as the chair for critical studies in higher education and the vice chancellor, you know, the idea around a Mandela Studies program and maybe a possible institute or a mechanism emerge out of that, not as a kind of a thoughtless reaction to the proliferations of centers and institutes, but as a kind of way in which you convert the intellectual project that is resident within the inaugural speech, you tie it right throughout the name chains and give it a scholarly expression in a deep sense. But this is also tied to how the figure of Mandela came to be expressed in the public discourse, of course, over the past 5 odd years, and the way in which one engaged with history in so many different kinds of ways, and what you abstract from it, and how you frame it to create both a usable past and productive futures in that. Of course, many of those critiques, people are not arguing against it. It is what is it that one do with it as it emerges then in the space. I remember that the next morning, I called Crain and I called Verne. Verne was walking on his way to work. Crain you have to catch in the morning, otherwise, you know, between 6 and 8, otherwise you won't find him. And so I asked him, I said, hey, I had a meeting with a VC yesterday, you know, and this is what she would like to see emerging out of this. And of course, they responded in ways that was both thoughtful, critical, and let's think more about it, what it may mean, and so on. And that's where the discussion then started. And of course, I will come back to this again because we have half an hour to share this with you. But I just would like to check with maybe Crain first, you know, what got him so animated by the proposition on the table?
Thanks very much, Andre. Can you all hear me? Great. So first of all, I want to just acknowledge that what we're doing here, colleagues, friends, and comrades, is honoring, as the country has over the last year, the father, in some ways, and that word itself is a word which we will trouble in the course of the next couple of days, Mr. Mandela himself, but also Master Sulu. So this is our collaborative attempt to use this platform that we have here as a research community to engage alongside of all of the other entities that have done these kinds of things, and to hope that we bring a very different both process and a set of modalities for thinking about how to engage with these figures of our history. So we are simultaneously honoring these folks, but we are beginning to also think about how they come to be a presence in the meanings of the institutions that we occupy. So that's more than just for the record to say that, colleagues, that we are participating in this national program. But we're doing more than that. And of course, you'll hear from Verne and Andre and myself what that more is. My more is this. I am absolutely taken with the incredible possibilities of thinking about Mr. Mandela as a figure of modernity, right? And how we come to understand Mr. Mandela as a mode for us of entering the space of the modern. And to be in the modern in a way which is transgressive in a language that I think that we have yet to be coming upon. So he presents for me, and I'm absolutely amazed. I have lots of books on Mr. Mandela. I probably have more books on Mr. Mandela than I have on most other people. I also have lots of books on Gandhi. But I'm constantly amazed by the new things that keep emerging. And there are new things coming out all the time. But we haven't yet come to, I think, pay attention to how this history provides us an opportunity of thinking about South Africa's emergence into colonialism, into modernity. And it's a really interesting thing for me to tell that story of Mr. Mandela as he argues with his elders. And he tells his elders that I'm not going to do what you want me to do. And he runs away. You know, he goes to Johannesburg. He refuses to be married. And that's an incredibly interesting moment. It's a moment after which he has encountered Mkai, the great poet of Xhosa tradition and so on. It's after that. And he comes to a sense of clarity that I need to find my own way. And it's that, Andre, that I am interested in thinking about recruiting into how we come to work with this idea of Mr. Mandela. And it's more than big politics. It's what you were talking about last night, Sibongile. It's the small politics. It's the politics of being. And it's how you come to think and use Mr. Mandela as a set of possibilities, through that I think that we have amazing opportunities here. I'd like to come back to talk about this a little more, but I don't want to speak all the time.
No, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I want to speak a little more bureaucratically than the two of you have. In terms of our response to that initial invitation, provocation, I think maybe 4 layers for us informed our thinking about a possible partnership for this colloquium. The first one is that this is an institution that carries the name Nelson Mandela, and part of the work we do is to oversee what is now over 60 institutions around the world who carry that name in an authorized fashion. Now, I mean, you used to be Nelson Mandela Metropolitan, which, associated you with a lot of local authority shenanigans and so on. So in a way, we were quite pleased from that perspective when the name changed. But it's very seldom that an institution carrying that name comes to us with a proposal to do really meaningful work. Most of the time, we're just trying to contain inappropriate conduct. But then a second layer for us is that after Madiba gave us the new mandate, as it was at the time in 2007, to transform from being a post-presidential office into being a human rights-oriented NGO, promoting social justice through difficult memory and dialogue work, we very deliberately sought partnerships with universities, with the academy more broadly. So for us, this partnership adds to what is a whole medley of relationships with universities. Third layer for us is that Nelson Mandela scholarship is really in its infancy. One of the worst parts of my job between 2004 and 2014 was that I had to read every book written about Madiba and watch every documentary and Hollywood film and so on. And I spoke about this a few months ago, is that, you know, that space is dominated by white voices, by male voices, by voices from outside our country. And that's just to begin to name the deficiencies in this Nelson Mandela scholarship. So here's a project that offers us a really, I think, a fecund space to explore what could be done there. I mean, I see, you know, Siraj is with us, and I remember having read maybe 20 books and 10, 15 scholarly articles in those early years, 2004 to 2007. And eventually, I was giving up. You know, that dominant narrative that just gets repeated over and over again. And then Siraj sent me his PhD, and it was so refreshing. It's a tragedy it hasn't been published in book form yet. But we need to be encouraging more of that kind of critical work, robust critical work. And then lastly, just there's a personal layer for me, is that I've worked with both Crain and Andre over the years. With you, Andre, I think the first one was when we were both on the FXI board. And access to information, I think it's still a critical issue for our country. But for this particular project, who has access? Who has access to the academy? Who has access to publishing partners? Who gets to be heard on platforms? Sad it's three old men here this morning. And Crain, we've worked together on the Mandela Initiative on Poverty and Inequality. And that's over 3-4 years. And I think that any project that is both engaging with the legacy, but also trying to pursue the unfinished business, is simply going to have to grapple with those issues. So, again, it weaves into the tapestry of this colloquium for me. So that's why we said yes, Andre.
Thanks, Verne. I'm not so sure. Is Professor Mango here? Because I haven't seen him in Sepamadingozi. I'm just trying to check whether there's no issue there around their presence. Marisa, can you double check that for me? Yeah. Because I wanted to refer to Kolela, and I see Advocate Mbeka has also arrived. Welcome, Advocate, because the ideas around the scholarly work is now also increasing, both through the explorations of these two scholars that we have, and that's a fascinating and a great development. And pulling that together under a program with so many collaborators and the possibilities infinite is something that we're looking forward to. And part of the framing, as you would know, universities are complex systems, you know, and processing these various ideas into a program that can respond both to the bureaucratic impulses of the university, but also the creativity of the intellectual project, is part of what the VC is processing through the different sets of structures and so on. And we have left the idea and its format very open as part of this journey to co-travel and to co-create, of course, and also then to bring in a stronger young student voice into this space. Part of that will have to be the engagement of, like the absence of a national inclusive narrative of progress, no? Because I think that in large part has created these various platforms of interpretations that are emerging around the social figure of Mandela. So apart from these kinds of big politics, our responsibility at the level of the politics with a small p is to work on an everyday basis towards the kinds of social justice ideals that the university in any case should stand for. And if this is one avenue in which we can do that with a particular kind of tagging around the name of Madiba, great, that is something that can even provide for new ways of thinking to it. And as you can notice, despite the fact that Salo had a field day last night with my shoes, I went back to my old shoes just to show him that I am not going to be dictated. Nelson Mandela University is not going to be dictated by the Nelson Mandela Foundation. So thanks.
So we don't have anybody here going to be talking about Mr. Mandela and fashion. But there's a whole big discussion there, Andre, which you should engage around that. He was very particular. He was very particular about how he dressed.
We'll take that out somewhere, no? I must say my VC didn't support me yesterday. Any one of you who would like, and then because we can shift on, but if you have a final comment, Crain?
So this is just to say to all of you that, and we began speaking last night about where the scholarship obligation of all of this goes. So of course there are political obligations. We have obligations in a way to these big questions of development and dealing with these issues of social justice. But I just want to pause for a minute around the scholarship challenge and just say to you that I really hope that we can all see this. And this is not the only place in the country where this is happening. There are many places in the country where the idea of what the South African university could be are bubbling and fermenting in really interesting kinds of ways. But here's another opportunity here now. And what I'm wanting to just ask all of us is to recognize, and the word fecund was used. You know what that means? Fertile. It means fertile. It means something that can generate. So here we have a real opportunity. And it's, of course, not the first time in our country that we've had, over the last 100 years, intellectual opportunities. But here's an opportunity for engaging with history, sociology, politics, anthropology, and a whole range of disciplines, And the opportunity is, of course, about facts, however you want to think about those kinds of things. But it's also about interpretation, right? How you come to these fields, how you come to be a sociologist, how you come to be a literary theorist. And the challenge that we have here, and that's the decolonial stuff, the challenge is that a lot of our disciplines are totally, I was going to use the word bloody, so I won't, are totally derivative. We depend so much on other people. okay? And I'm wanting to argue here that we have the opportunity here. And it's not an opportunity we must be arrogant about, but we must be bold, we must be courageous, we must take big steps, we must get things wrong and deal with getting them wrong, right? So we must be brave and courageous here in saying here's an opportunity to thinking about how to deal with the dominant canons which have come to us. And is there an opportunity here for us to be able to think analytic categories? I'll just leave that with you. Analytic categories. What analytic categories? It's a big ask I'm asking here. What analytic categories might we tomorrow afternoon begin to say are whispering to us? Are we able to do that after 2 days? Probably not, right? It's probably too big an ask to do. But it's the burden of what we're sitting in place here. What new analytic categories can you develop? And I'll give you just one example. Archie Mafeje, you all know the name, hey? So Archie Mafeje has written this incredible body of material for anthropology and sociology. And he takes on dominant sociology and dominant anthropology. He takes them on precisely because they give those disciplines the languages, the analytic frameworks to try to understand societies that have no experience of those histories from which those languages come. Like this term, modes of production, right? It's a very bread and butter term for a whole lot of us. We would have been trained in sociology with a term like that. What's the mode of production? What's the mode of production that you need to use to come to understand pre-colonial Africa? Okay? So what Mafeje does, and this is what I would like to say to us. What Mafeje does is to say that the use of that term to come to understand, for example, what is going on in the Lake District of Africa, even that term Lake District is problematic. You know, it comes from Wordsworth. It comes from England. So we've got to find new languages. And he says that this term, modes of production, doesn't begin to understand the politics of why those political entities, sociological kinds of structures of Middle Africa are as they are. We need new categories, he says, to talk about what these relationships are all about. I mean, you get a sense of what I'm talking about. Yeah? You know, we need new ways of trying to describe what's going on in those spaces. So do we have the opportunity here, I'm asking you, do we have the opportunity here to dare enter that space, right?
Lovely. Thank you, Crain. Verne, are you covered? Yeah. Anybody with a burning question? Because then we shift to the next session. If not, about how this thing came about, I think we covered that and narrated that. I think in a substantive way that gives you a sense of where this idea is coming from. And we're also processing that in different kinds of ways, to see how that can take form and take shape. And that will be part of our discussion tomorrow as well. So many thanks for this and for coming again. We're really looking forward to a stimulating, invigorating discussion. And I'll hand over now to Nobubele and her team. She will introduce them and set the scene for the discussion in the second session on Mandela at Must Fall. If you would like to grab a tea or coffee or something like that, just 5 minutes, okay? Whilst they come to the front and do that, okay? Because we are not going to have a formal tea break as well, because we had that now at 9 o'clock. And you can, if you want to move around and get something extra, do that now whilst they are coming to the front, okay? Thank you so much.